and the omnibus. So I was forced into the Archers when I was a child. And look, it's come back to bite me later on. I'm awash with this stuff.
The Archers is the world's longest-running radio show, with more than 15,000 episodes broadcast. Despite being a rural flavour show, The Archers is recorded in the heart of...
Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take that stack of information you've shared and really distill it down. We aim for the most crucial insights, custom tailored just for you. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into, well, the fascinating and sometimes really baffling world of human interaction.
Yeah, it can be tricky.
Definitely. We're looking specifically at how misunderstandings, maybe hidden agendas, and those, truly unexpected connections can completely reshape our personal relationship.
And even big business decisions too, right?
Exactly. Big business decisions.
And the source material we're drawing from today is honestly incredibly rich. It's excerpts from an audio drama.
Right. And
it just beautifully illustrates the complexities of, everyday communication and the surprising truth that often pop up when our first assumptions get challenged. It's like a masterclass in human dynamics.
Absolutely. So our mission here is to unpack two intertwining storylines from this drama. We want to reveal those often tense threads of conflict, the nuances of loyalty, and those surprising moments, the reveals that really keep you hooked.
They certainly do.
So as we dive in, what dynamics, what sort of things immediately jump out at you?
Well, what's immediately captivating, I think, is just how quickly things can escalate when that context is missing.
Oh, for sure.
These stories are just a perfect demonstration of that exact thing.
Agreed. Okay, let's kick off with the first narrative. It opens with what seems like a simple, maybe even heartwarming premise.
Right.
It's a mother preparing for a prison visit. She's filled with anticipation, getting ready to see her son, George.
Yeah, and you get this immediate buildup of suspense around a surprise George apparently has for his mom. You can almost feel her hope, can't you? She even starts speculating it might be like a handmade pot from a prison class or something.
Yeah, something symbolizing connection.
Exactly, a reconnection, a fresh start.
Yeah.
It really sets this hopeful, kind of vulnerable tone for her character.
And then the narrative just takes this absolutely jarring turn, and it's before she even gets inside the prison.
Right, the car park.
Picture this. The mom's in the prison car park, and she has this incredibly heated encounter with a younger woman. It's like 0 to 60, a full-on verbal sparring match that just seems to erupt out of nowhere.
It really does. This younger woman, she's in a yellow Beetle, apparently.
Okay.
And she immediately goes on the offensive, accusing the mother of cutting her up, parking in her space. It's just instantly aggressive.
And the mother, naturally, she defends herself, points out the young woman was just idling the engine and, crucially, on her phone.
Distracted.
And that it's a public car park for prison visitors, not exactly assigned seating.
Not at all. But the younger woman just doubles down, doesn't she? She escalates it way beyond the parking thing.
Oh, yeah.
Starts throwing accusations of ageism, calls the mother a boomer who ruined the planet, and implies this sense of privilege. Like the mother thinks she can behave however you like to people my age. Suddenly, it's generational warfare.
It's completely shifted. It's not about the car anymore, is it?
Not one bit. And the mother doesn't really back down either. She fires back, highlights the young woman's sense of entitlement, calls her an idiot.
Understandable reaction, maybe?
Perhaps. Yeah. And then the younger woman makes this really pointed, very personal jab, something about the mother's behavior potentially influencing her son's path to prison.
Ouch.
Ooh. That's below the belt.
It just completely spirals.
It's almost, almost comical how fast two strangers can go from zero to war over a parking spot until you pause and think about the underlying assumptions driving it all.
Right.
This car park scene is such a powerful example of how readily we judge others based on those first impressions, completely lacking any real context.
Yeah.
It really makes you ask, how quickly can just a minor inconvenience blow up into a really heated personal attack when those unstated biases or maybe just background stress are bubbling under the surface?
It's alarming how fast it can happen, but the real, jaw drop moment came inside the prison walls.
The visit itself.
Imagine the mother's face when George introduces her to Amber, who is the very same young woman from the car park clash.
Oh, the awkwardness.
Right. What did the mother initially assume about Amber, and how was that assumption just completely shattered?
Well, the mother totally misread the whole thing, hadn't she? She'd assumed Amber was George's community offender manager.
Okay, based on something George had said before.
Exactly. She recalled a previous conversation about him meeting one, but George immediately corrects her, explains his actual manager is a little fat bloke called Ray, who he'd already seen that morning.
So not Amber.
Not Amber. Then comes the shocker. Amber is George's girlfriend.
Wow. That's quite the reveal. A total gut punch, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And that immediate anger, that defensiveness in the car park, it just melts away, doesn't it? Transforms into this awkward, almost instant apology once the truth is out.
It flips completely.
What does that dramatic flip tell us about the hidden power of context in our own everyday judgments?
Well, it really underscores the danger, doesn't it, of relying on partial information or just, preconceived notions.
Mm-hmm.
That entire car park conflict, it stemmed from a complete lack of context about who the other person was, what their connection was.
Right, no idea they were about to meet properly.
Exactly. It highlights how easily we project meaning onto situations without all the facts, turning that intense anger into immediate apologies once the truth emerges.
It's quite a lesson.
It is. So for you listening, it's maybe worth considering. How often might your snap judgments about strangers or even acquaintances be based on just a tiny sliver of the full story? And how often might that lead you completely astray?
That's a good question to sit with. Okay, so from that kind of personal clash, a clash of personalities in a car park, let's pivot. Let's look at a clash of principles, this time in the boardroom.
Okay.
It's a very different setting, but maybe some similar undercurrents. We're shifting now to a high-stakes business battle. It's playing out in the world of land management.
Right.
We've got Brian and Stella grappling with a major proposed change. It's coming from Justin Elliott, and it concerns the BL estate.
And what's really fascinating here, I think, is the clash of fundamental principles. You got Justin Elliott, who's clearly a key figure, and he intends to take half of the BL estate farmland out of arable production. That's land used for growing crops, obviously.
Right, for what purpose?
For rewilding.
Yeah.
And this isn't just presented as a business decision for him. He explicitly frames it as a matter of principle.
A principle to do what?
To protect nature, to boost biodiversity. That's his stated aim.
Okay, and what are Justin's core arguments for this rewilding initiative? He seems pretty convinced it's necessary.
He is. He argues, first off, that the land in question isn't exactly prime agricultural land. It's not first-class arable land.
Okay.
So, lower quality.
Yeah, lower quality. Specifically grade 3 or 4, meaning it's less fertile, less productive naturally.
Got it.
He also points out that the current food production on this specific land relies heavily on, chemicals derived from fossil fuels.
Right. Fertilizers, pesticides.
Exactly. And tractors, which also use fossil fuels, and all of that produce more CO2. So from his perspective, continuing to farm it that way just isn't sustainable. It's not planning for the future.
Okay, that's his environmental case. Brian, however, the farmer, he sees this totally differently, doesn't he?
Oh, completely. He sees it as nothing short of a ludicrous gesture. That's his term.
Ludicrous. Why?
Because of the severe practical implications for his operation, home farm. He stresses that the arable contract they have with the BL estate is a huge part of our business.
So financially critical? Absolutely essential, he says, for a home farm makes a profit. And beyond his own bottom line, he also raises these bigger concerns about food security.
Okay, so profit and food supply.
Right. It's clear Brian views the financial survival of home farm as paramount, and he sees Justin's plan as a direct, almost existential threat.
It really sets up that classic conflict, doesn't it? When environmental idealism clashes so directly with economic reality, how do you find a viable path forward?
It's a very real-world dilemma, isn't it? You see this playing out everywhere, and poor Stella seems to be caught right in the crossfire.
Yeah, let's unpack her difficult position in all of this, because Brian doesn't seem to be holding back with her.
No, he doesn't pull any punches, does he? He directly accuses Stella of disloyalty.
How so?
Claims she knew about Justin's plan and deliberately didn't tell him. He even suggests she's in cahoots with Justin, or maybe could be poached by him.
Wow, that must feel like a deep betrayal from her perspective, accusing her of plotting against him.
It must. But Stella, she defends herself pretty vigorously, doesn't she?
She does. What's her side?
She states quite clearly she did everything I could to put him off the idea. She tried to dissuade Justin.
Okay.
And she says she genuinely believed Justin, when he promised he wouldn't bring it up in that specific meeting. So she felt blindsided too, in a way.
Right, she trusted Justin's word.
Exactly. And she also, quite cleverly, reminds Brian that he initially thought her joining the BL board would be an advantage for Home Farm.
Ah, turning his own logic back on him.
Precisely. And she's very clear in affirming her loyalty. She says, I'm very happy at Home Farm. This is where I want to stay, working for you.
It really sounds like a classic case of, well, miscommunication maybe, but also misplaced anger.
I think so. Brian, feeling cornered and perhaps betrayed by the larger situation, by Justin.
Yeah.
He projects that frustration onto Stella, the person closest to him in the hierarchy, maybe.
And that leads him to declare war on Justin. That's pretty strong language.
It is. It tells you a lot about how stress and perceived threats can fracture internal alliances, doesn't it? But ultimately, despite Brian's anger and Stella being caught in the middle, the power dynamic seems pretty clear here.
How so?
Well, according to Justin, the decision is made and the board meeting is a formality.
A formality, why?
Because he, or rather his company, Demora Capital, has controlling interest.
Ah, so they own enough shares to push it through regardless.
Effectively, yes. His vote carries the day.
So despite Brian's really passionate opposition and Stella's difficult position, the rewilding plan looks set to proceed.
It appears so. Which forces Home Farm, as Brian acknowledges, to start looking around for other contracting work.
That's a pretty harsh lesson in business realities and power dynamics, isn't it?
It really is. When one party holds that controlling interest, even strong principled opposition can just be overridden.
Okay, so we've explored these two very different scenarios. A personal confrontation at a prison car park, and this high-stakes business battle over land use. What surprising facts or insights connect these seemingly disparate events for you? Where's the common ground?
Well, what's truly insightful, I think, is how both situations hinge so fundamentally on assumptions and differing perspectives.
Okay, explain that.
In the car park, you had the mother and Amber making these instant snap judgments about each other's character, their intent.
Yeah, based on almost nothing.
Based on extremely limited information. And similarly, in the business story, Brian assumes Stella's loyalty is compromised, again, without really having the full picture.
Right, he jumps to conclusions.
While Justin, on the other side, seems to assume that his environmental principle should automatically override all the practical business concerns for Home Farm. Perhaps without fully appreciating Brian's reality, his perspective.
It really shows how quickly relationships can sour or just completely shift based on perceived slights, hidden information, or just those deeply held but often unstated differing values. They clash.
Exactly. And look at the outcomes. The car park incident went from intense conflict to this, well, awkward but necessary civility once the true connection was finally revealed.
Right, the context changed everything.
While in the business world, a change in land use, driven by one person's principled vision, leads to an outright declaration of war between former allies. It completely reshapes the landscape of their professional relationship.
So the stakes feel different, but the root cause, assumptions, and perspective seems similar.
I think that's right. And it really raises a critical question for you, for anyone listening. How often do our own conflicts, whether they're personal or professional, stem not really from malice or bad intentions, but simply from a lack of complete information? Or maybe just a failure to truly step back and understand another person's perspective or figure out their underlying motivations.
That's a powerful point. Today we've taken a deep dive into two really compelling narratives, haven't we?
We have.
Exposing the surprising ways that communication, or sometimes the stark lack of it, can lead to these unexpected revelations, strained loyalties, and even, as we saw, declarations of war.
Yeah, we saw how a simple, almost mundane car park dispute just blew up because of rapid-fire snap judgments.
Only to be completely diffused almost instantly by a surprising family connection.
Exactly. And then we saw how a deeply held environmental plan, a principled stance, ignited this fierce business conflict.
Forcing a dramatic reevaluation of alliances, of strategies, of maybe even friendships.
Right, the common thread running through both stories.
What would you say it is?
For me, it's the profound impact of our perceptions and the vital importance of looking beyond the surface.
Beyond that first impression.
Beyond the first impression, yeah. To try and uncover the deeper layers, the context, the why behind someone's actions or words.
So a final thought then for you to mull over as we wrap up.
Okay. Consider the hidden connections or maybe the unstated motivations that might be influencing the interactions in your own life right now. How might understanding those deeper layers, really trying to see the bigger picture, transform what feels like a conflict into perhaps an unexpected collaboration?
Or at least just a clearer understanding.
Or at the very least, yeah, a much clearer understanding of the situation you're actually dealing with.
So, what are you doing now?
Just getting ready for the next episode. Just
And,
moving mics around.
So, what do you do?
I'll do the spot effects on the archers. Any
Are you what we
movements
call Foley then?
and- kind of. Yep.
Okay. And these are all part of the paraphernalia of production.
Yep. That's the ball bar. That's,
This one.
yep. That's.
Haley so wanted to be in their own place when their baby came. It's due in 2 months. Not much chance of that now. No. I mean, it would have been a stretch for them financially, mind, but I just wish there was something practical I could do to help them, Caroline.
I think The Archers has had this immense popularity over the years, basically because it has always very accurately reflected the reality of life and living in a rural community at whatever